Okay, we're going to talk about husbands and wives today. This is on page 54 in the handout. And we don't have too many more of these left. And we'll see what we want to start after that. But husbands and wives, page 54, understanding men. Okay? You know, they say it's difficult to understand women. Well, I think it's difficult to understand men, too. I think it's difficult for both of them. But we certainly, and this is one of his main points in the handout, is that our culture, our society, our country has really tried to change the roles of men and women. And, of course, we see that absolutely everywhere. I mean, you know, any area, including religion, our culture has tried to change those functions, those roles. And he makes a point that God made men and women different. He made them different emotionally. He made them different psychologically, mentally, emotionally. I mean, he made them different. And he did that for a reason. Because, and we'll read here in a minute, because a man and a woman, when they get married, complement one another. And so their strengths help each other in their roles. And so on page 55, he makes the point that God has equipped the male to function in the unique role for which he made him. God made men differently. He gave them different strengths. And God knew that when he made men. Of course, overall, men tend to be physically stronger. And that plays into certain areas in which they are to lead. He says, one goal of any wife should be to understand the traits of men in general and familiarize herself with those personality traits embodied in her husband. Because they're so different, I think this is one of the reasons, one of many reasons, of course there's many reasons that people get divorced and end up separating, is because they don't understand, the men don't understand the women's traits, and the women don't always understand the men's traits, and so that clashes. But they're supposed to complement one another, those differences, not make it more difficult, but to make being married easier. And that's what I think people often don't understand. God made us that way for a reason. We don't like the word submission or subordinate. Those words in our culture are not things that people like to hear. And in any area, they just don't like to hear them. When people think about having a subordinate role, a lot of people in our society think, oh, well, that means that person is inferior in some way. And, of course, that's not true at all. Being subordinate does not have anything to do with being better or worse or superior or inferior. It just has to do with roles. Denise and I have told our principals that we would never, ever, ever want to be a principal. And I wouldn't. And I've told every principal that we've had at East Newton, I would never want to have that role. Okay? And I'm subordinate to the principals we've had. And I like it that way. Because I just would not, I wouldn't function well, first of all, as a principal or a superintendent. But I don't want that type of job. I like teaching. And when you become a principal or superintendent, you don't get to teach anymore. You're not in the classrooms very much, and you don't have those relationships with students. So even though I'm subordinate to to the principal and the superintendent, I don't feel inferior to them. So it's not about being better or worse or superior or inferior. It's just about roles and functions of those roles and who is best to fill those roles. And that's the way it is with husbands and wives. Since God gave us different abilities and strengths and so forth, he did that so that we could fulfill our different roles to the best of our ability. And I think he brings that out very well in our handout. Husbands and wives both need to know their roles, and why God has made them the way he has made them. Because it is best, even though our culture says otherwise. Our culture promotes two men being married, two women being married. But God's very specific. From, you almost say day one, he's made it clear in the Bible that that's not the way families are to be. It's supposed to be a male and a female, and the reason for that is how he's made them. He's made them so that because of their abilities and their characteristics, their different abilities, they can raise a family better than any other situation. And we see the effects of not following that in our society with, single mothers raising a family or whatever combination you want to think of. It's best when a husband and a wife, a male and a female, we can't just say husbands and wives anymore, we have to say males and females, raise a family. That is the way it's supposed to be. That's the way God made us. And of course, in our society, they don't even want people mentioning God or the Bible. They don't even want that mentioned, which is sad. But someone, in every group or organization or whatever, someone has to take the lead. Someone has to take responsibility. I don't remember which president was it that had on his desk, the buck stops here. Was it Truman? I was thinking it was Truman, wasn't it? And that's the way it's got to be. There has to be somebody that takes responsibility, that says, okay, I have to do this. This is my duty. This is my responsibility. He goes on page 56 and says, there's nothing indicated in the Bible about a man's intellectual or moral superiority. It has nothing to do with that. The Bible never even hints at either one of those things. And of course, a lot of problems arise when the male believes that he is. And then that causes problems as well. So, it is wisdom. It's the wise thing to do to follow God's order. Because he is the one that made us. He knows exactly what characteristics and abilities he's given males, and the same thing what he's given females. He knows exactly. He's the one that created us. He knows us better than we do. So let's go to Proverbs 14:1. Proverbs 14:1. Whenever you get there, just go ahead and the wise woman builds her house. All right? But what does it say about the foolish one? The foolish one pulls it down. See, the woman, just like the man, can destroy the house. Or, just like the man, she can build it up. And we see that throughout society. It's so, there's so much, like he says, at stake in our families. So many of my students go back and forth between, their parents are split up, so they go back and forth, back and forth. Or some of it just use it as an excuse, so I left my homework at the other house. But nevertheless, they kind of live in two different households. And then some of them don't even live with their parents anymore. They live with their grandparents. And just so many different situations. And it's difficult. It's difficult for them. All right. At the bottom of page 56, he says, taking on the role. When a man enters marriage, he's stepping into a new world. And it is a new world. It's a totally different world. And, some men, I think most deal with it pretty well, but some of them do not. No longer are you might say, master of your own world. You have other people to consider now, not just you. Which means you have to have some self-discipline. I underlined that in the second column on page 56. Men must have self-discipline to suppress wants, control spending, plan for the future. That's their responsibility. They've got to have self-control. The most important element, though, of the man's role, the husband's role, is a spiritual one. And, of course, that is so true, and that's where many, many men completely fall down. It's because they don't fulfill their spiritual role. He asks the question, men, how many of us see ourselves as the spiritual leaders of our home? Are we setting a course that will give our family the best chance of getting to heaven? Because ultimately, that's like the most important thing in a marriage, is for the man and woman to help each other get to heaven. That should be like the greatest priority. Everything, every decision should revolve around, is this going to help us get to heaven, or is this going to hinder us from getting there? Those are good questions to ask whenever anything happens. And there's a lot of ways that the man is to take upon himself that responsibility. Lots of different things he is supposed to do in the home as the spiritual leader. And there are just so many things that are important for the man to do. I mean, the children, if there are children, need to see the man, the father, praying. They need to see him reading his Bible. They need to see him, showing that attending church services is very important. They need to see that he shows love and respect for his wife. So lots of things. And all of those things are helpful for the man and woman, the children, getting to heaven. Again, that should be the ultimate question. It's a very important role. He asked the question on top of page 57, men, is this a role and responsibility you desire? Does it fit your conception of what you wish to be? If not, you have a serious attitude problem. And remember, this is all about attitudes. Regarding one of the most fundamental aspects of earthly life. So, men have been given a great responsibility in the home. So let's look at the questions for discussion on page 57 real quick. Look at question number 2. What women need to see in their husbands pertaining to leadership? Someone give me one. Well, okay, I did mention several of them, didn't I? That's true. I kind of answered that question myself. They do need to see. Well, what about anything else? I did mention several, but anything else? I'm sorry? Self-sacrifice. That's, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Self-sacrifice. That is a, I mean, if the wife sees the husband willing to do that, if the children see the husband willing to do that, I mean that is such a great attitude to express in the household. You're going to say something, Dean? Okay. Yes. That's really what our society's got all screwed up. I mean, they really do. They've got it all screwed up about, well, I have to submit. If I get stopped for speeding, I have to submit to the police officer. Now, I don't think he's a superior being. I don't think he's a superior person. But I submit to him. Why? Because of his role. All right? Same way with a judge or whomever. They have roles. I mean, I submit to my principal. Okay? And again, I don't think that he's a better person. I don't think he's superior. But he has a role. And that role is different than mine. And it has nothing to do, like David said, with inferiority. Absolutely nothing. But boy, our society really pushes that. About submission is the same thing as inferiority, and they're not even related. Well, now let's talk a little bit about the woman. Let's go back to Genesis 2. This is at the bottom of page 57. Someone read Genesis 2, verse 18 for us. No. Genesis 2:18. Okay. God acknowledged that man was incomplete without woman. Male was not complete without female. So, at the very beginning of creation, God makes that acknowledgement. That, again, it's the two together that make what he wanted. Yes. Right. Right. That's right. Didn't make anybody inferior. Didn't make anybody superior. There, again, it's that they complement one another. They help one another in their roles. The wife helps the husband helps the wife to fulfill those God-given roles. And it's such an important thing for both the husband and wife to realize what their roles are. And again, it's going back to my school analogy, it's not going to be good if the principal and I don't understand each other's roles. I mean, it's not going to work well at all if we don't understand each other's roles, what they're supposed to do, what I'm supposed to do. And when we understand our roles and fulfill our roles, then things work smoothly. But when we get outside those roles, things don't work very smoothly. Well, that's the way it is in the home. The husband and wife have roles, and when they both, fulfill those roles, then things work smoothly. He says on page 58 that the wife is the nurturer of humanity. That's something that God has given women better ability at, is nurturing. She's more of a nurturer. And again, there's always a few exceptions, but by and large, that's one of the characteristics that women have. They're good at nurturing. And because of that, like he says, they exercise tremendous influence. You know, there are so many women in our society think, helping with the kids and working in the house is somehow demeaning. It's incredibly important. Most of what people learn, they learn in those early years. I know that. You ought to try teaching freshmen. They're almost beyond help. But it's those early years. And who has a lot of influence? Mothers during those early years. So they exercise tremendous influence. Just tremendous influence. The wise man will recognize his special dependence upon his wife and will bestow due honor upon her as God's special creation for him. And boy, is that true. If the husband starts to take the wife for granted or doesn't think that her role is important or whatever, trouble is brewing. Trouble is brewing. Yes. Oh, good point. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. What? Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, boy, that is so true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a very important role. That, yep. Yeah, right. Not just the wife, but yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's very, very good point. Yeah. 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 And it's not done in a lot of cases, which is sad. Um, I've already talked about how, in general, men are physically stronger, uh, and Peter mentions that in 1 Peter 3. Um, and again, it's not something that people like to hear in our society. But again, that goes back to men and women being made differently. We are made differently in so many ways. I mentioned emotionally, physically, mentally. I mean, just different. But it's that way on purpose. It is. It's that way on purpose. God made us that way. And so we should not try and change how God has made men and women and their roles. A man is, that kind of goes back to what was just said, a man has a great responsibility about how he treats, or a husband, how he treats his wife. Especially in front of children or neighbors or whoever. it's so important about how he treats her. The wife gives up a lot when she gets married. The woman gives up a lot when she gets married. She gives up a lot of independence. So a man needs to realize that when a woman says yes when they get married, that she's giving up a lot. She's giving up a lot of independence. So that's important too. And he mentions the bottom of page 59, a strong, wise, and resourceful husband will still need a counselor, a sounding board, a companion, a morale booster. He'll need an equally competent, intelligent, and insightful partner to help him retain his objectivity, to stand up to criticism, to press on toward his goals. Again, it's about the two helping each other, complementing each other, so that the two together are much stronger than they are separate. And that goes back to those different abilities, those different characteristics, and it's critical that they understand that. He gives some examples of women in the Bible. He talks about Abigail and Sarah, Manoah's wife, different ones. And it's important, all right, of what she does. Well, we're almost done. Let's go ahead and read 1 Peter 3, 5, and 6, and then that will finish our lesson. 1 Peter 3, verses 5 and 6. For in this manner, he says, holy women, what did they do? They trusted in God, and they were submissive to their own husbands. And he says, that was an adorning. He says they adorned themselves being submissive. And so that being submissive and obeying was an adornment. Was an adornment. I think that's a great way of looking at it.